Quinn. Nice to meet ya.
For the purpose of critique, review, education.
Because I'm Harley frickin' Quinn.
The Shiny Squirrel Podcast is proud to present the Sweetheart Harley podcast with Harley.
Guilty as charged.
Hello and welcome back to the Sweetheart Harley podcast with Harleen. I am Harleen and I am your host for this podcast. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Harley Quinn movie pitches that should be movies and are not movies. But first, I want to go over some new things that I will be incorporating in my podcast. So every podcast, my bi-weekly version, I will be putting on my Instagram story, submit questions to my podcast, and I will be answering them live on my podcast. And you guys know I already do some Harley Quinn news. We have no new Harley Quinn news at this point, but DC Fandom has opened up their area for submissions for art and cosplay. There are only a few days left, so by the time you listen to this, it may be too late. But I did go ahead and submit 10 because 10 was the max, so I did submit 10 different photos and videos of me in cosplay, so hopefully you guys get to see me on DC Fandom live whenever they broadcast that. So DC Fandom has been leaking little bits of information here and there, nothing on Harley yet. The only other new news in the Harleyverse is that for the Suicide Squad 2, or the newest Suicide Squad release on Blu-ray and DVD, it will come with a blooper reel, outtakes, the music for the movie. I believe there's also some parts for filming the movie. And James Gunn confirmed there will be extra Harley Quinn scenes. I don't know if it's one scene or multiple scenes, but there will be extra Harley scenes in that. So before we get started in our podcast, I do want to just answer the questions that people had submitted on my Instagram. And if you submitted a question, thank you. I'll be saying your username in the question and answering it to the best of my ability. If you guys want to ask me questions, follow me on Instagram at sweetheart.harley and keep an eye on my story. I do post a lot throughout the day on my story every day, so just keep an eye out for that for the next time I ask these questions. So DNL Ham asked pink or purple. I'm a pink girl, so I'm going to choose pink. Surprisingly, pink is one of my favorite colors, specifically pastel pink, which people find funny for some reason, but it's one of my favorite colors. Foxman_Clover asked, have you ever found a four-leaf clover? I have found a four-leaf clover. I found one when I was much younger. I was probably around 8 years old, playing in the grass, searching and sifting through it, and I ended up finding a four-leaf clover. But since then, I have not been digging through grass at all. But I have found one, so hopefully that answers your questions. SK8 Toys asked, what superpower would you want? For me, that's a difficult one because I'm afraid of heights, so it couldn't be flying. Maybe the power to read minds, because I think that would be very interesting, or the power to be invisible. So if I see somebody in the store that I know and they know me, I can just turn invisible instead of ducking behind something to try and hide myself from them. So either being able to read people's thoughts or the ability to disappear whenever I want. Canada_Dono asks, who wrote the best Harley Quinn / told the best comic stories? For me, this is a really difficult one because I love all of Harley Quinn's comics. I have been reading Harley Quinn's comics for a very, very long time, at least over a decade at this point. I have her first ever comic appearance framed in my office, and some of my favorite covers or signed covers in my office that are framed. My favorite Harley Quinn backstory is definitely Harleen by Stephen Sajek, because it is so beautifully created and crafted, and you can see the Joker's true manipulation of Harley Quinn and how she ended up falling for him. So for me, that is personally my favorite origin story of Harley Quinn as Harleen. As for other comics Harley's been in, Her 2000 Carl Kessel comic series is one of my favorites. She's in her classic suit, and this was like her first time ever out on her own. It's also her first standalone comic series. So I have a lot of love for that series. I remember when I was much younger, I read that series, and I've been hooked on Harley comics ever since. But I also loved Harley Quinn in the New 52 in 2011 because it showed how brutal she can be, and it was very graphic, and it showed her true aggression towards the Joker. At one point they try and kill each other in that series. So in Death, that's part of Death of the Family. So I really loved Harley Quinn in the New 52 Suicide Squad comics. And then Harley's other standalone series that started in 2013 by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner, the dynamic duo of the two. I know I've spoken about them on this podcast before, and if not on this podcast, I have featured them many times on my website. But in 2013, they started the New 52 Harley Quinn, and I loved this series because this is the first time, besides the Suicide Squad New 52, that we get to see Harley in different outfits, and they are all red and black based. This is the comic series where she has half black and half red hair. For a very long time, I dyed my hair half black and half red, so that is one of my favorite versions of Harley. Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner also went on to write Rebirth for Harley, which is a great series in itself. They give her such a sarcastic, funny humor, but also we get to see a slightly sadder and darker side of Harley. And then even her newest series by Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossmo, Infinite Frontier, I have been loving that series and keeping up with it because Harley is not over the top. She is not Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti put Harley Quinn a little bit over the top with her personality. She was very boisterous, how I would put it, through that comic series, which I couldn't relate to a lot because I'm an introvert, and I'm not that outgoing. But in Stephanie Phillips' version of Harley in Infinite Frontier, Harley Quinn, it's not that she's more reserved, but she has a very dry, sarcastic type of humor that I love because it matches my style of humor. So a lot of people might not find it funny, but I find it hysterical. She also doesn't make Harley Quinn be over the top. Harley Quinn is actually kind of trying to hide in this series, and she acknowledges her past was wrong, and she is trying to make it right. So I don't have a real answer for you on what is my favorite Harley Quinn story because I love every single one of them. Next question, _Harlan_. Hi, I'm a huge fan. In your experience, what's the healthiest way to keep your hair platinum blonde? I get this question sometimes, not that often, but in case you don't follow me on any social media, my hair is platinum blonde, almost to the point of being white. So it is the lightest it can be, and I do dye my own hair at home. So some tips to keep it healthy is first off, you need to use a good bleaching product. I use Schwarzkopf Blonde Me, which has a bunch of vitamins and oils in the bleach blend itself. So that helps to protect your hair. I do deep conditioning treatments weekly, if not multiple times a week. And I also sleep with a silk or satin cap on my head. So it's kind of like an oversized beanie. And I also have a silk pillowcase because cotton pillowcases tend to grab your hair and pull. So between the bleach I use, the deep conditioning and oil treatments I do, and the silk products that I place my head in, that helps to protect my bleached hair as much as possible. You will probably get some breakage with keeping your hair this light. I know I have a few spots in my head that have a little bit of breakage in my hair. I also do wear tape and hair extensions, so I keep my hair braided almost all of the time unless I'm going out or filming TikToks or YouTubes or videos or taking photos. So most of the time my hair is in braids, which also helps to protect it from possibly getting caught and torn on something, or just the weight of the extensions pulling down on my hair to break it. And then the last question we have here is from Jolly Roger 712. How many Harley-related tattoos do you have? Okay, let me think about this. So on my knuckles, I have tattooed Mad Love, obviously for the Mad Love comic. I have an area of my skin that I tattooed myself that is black and red diamonds, similar to Harley Quinn's tattoos in the DCEU movies, but they are black and red, and it does not wrap the full way around my arm because of other tattoos, but it wraps 75% around my arm, on my lower arm. On my upper arm, on the outer bicep of my upper arm, I have Harley Quinn in her New 52 Suicide Squad outfit with the Joker's skinned off face behind her, because that comic was just such a big part of my life, and that is one of my favorite Harley Quinn costume designs of all time, so I had to get it tattooed on me. Not Harley related, but on that same arm, on my inner arm, I have a portrait of Heath Ledger because he is my favorite Joker. What else do I have? Let's see. I know I always forget a few. Oh, on my right knee, I tattooed on myself. And disclaimer, I was trained by professionals in a shop, so please do not tattoo yourself. Stay at home, do it the right way. Get in a shop, do an apprenticeship, learn the correct way to tattoo. Hepatitis C can live on surfaces for 72 hours, and you don't want any kind of diseases or infections, so get a bloodborne pathogen certification, get in a shop, and learn the correct way to tattoo on people. Just a disclaimer for anyone listening. But on my right knee, I did tattoo a big red diamond, and it has 2 black small diamonds on either side of it. So I have diamonds on my knee. And then down my spine, me and my sister were going to get similar kinds of matching tattoos. So we wanted to get the chakra symbols, but instead of getting the chakra symbols, get images that can represent chakra symbols. So down my entire spine, I have the chakra symbols, but instead of the chakra symbols, they are Harley Quinn symbols. So I have, like Bud and Lou, I have a big smiling bomb, I have the classic Harley face. It's just an outline. I never got it finished because the spine is an extremely painful place to get tattooed if you did not know that. So I never went back for the color and never got it colored in. It's just an outline still, and I got it maybe 7 years ago at this point. Maybe one day I'll work up the courage to go ahead and finish that piece, but my entire spine is Harley Quinn. And I think that's all the Harley Quinn tattoos. Oh, and one more. On the right side of my face, I actually have Harley Quinn diamonds tattooed on the right side of my face on my temple area. So those are all of my Harley Quinn tattoos. I actually recently posted a full tattoo tour on my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube at sweetheart.harley if you want to see all of my tattoos. The video is up there. So let's get into the podcast now. And remember, if you want me to answer your questions on this podcast, follow me on Instagram at sweetheart.harley. Check my stories. I'll probably put it up a few days before my next podcast goes live. And ask me anything you want, because I'll be answering the questions on this podcast. Excuse me. So I have a bunch of different ideas for Harley movie pitches. Okay, so stay with me here. And these are movies that have not been made, but should be made. And my top pick is Harleen, turning the comic book or graphic novel of Harleen by Steven Sajak into Harleen. So it would be a prequel, kind of. But I want it to be in the universe where Joaquin Phoenix's Joker lives, because I feel like that version of Harleen would do very well in a real life-like kind of situational movie, opposed to where Harley is now in the DCEU, which is more of a superhero kind of world. I feel like she would do well as Harleen in a more serious type of world. So I would really love to see a prequel of Harleen in the Joaquin Phoenix universe. I think that would be absolutely amazing. And Warner Brothers, hit a girl up, because like that role was made for me to play. So I mean, I'm waiting. And I'm waiting, and I will forever wait. So, Warner Brothers, I'm here. You don't even have to pay me. Just putting that into the universe. Projecting what I want. So the next one on my list is a Gotham City Sirens movie. And I think that this would be really important because when they did Birds of Prey, beforehand, there were talks of different Harley movies arising or rumors of them. And one of the rumors was potentially making a Gotham City Sirens movie. If you're not sure what the Gotham City Sirens is, it's with Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman, and they kind of team up together as a team throughout this entire comic series. It's a really great comic series, and I highly recommend you give it a read. But I would love to see a Gotham City Sirens movie because fans of comics know Gotham City Sirens. So that would bring in a huge comic fan base to see this movie, opposed to Birds of Prey that was an older comic. And it seemed like DC was kind of trying to do what Marvel did with Guardians of the Galaxy and take a comic that no one really knew of and bring it into the new age. So I think that's what they were trying to do with Birds of Prey, with obviously Harley leading the way. And then they had a Birds of Prey comic book that went along with it by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti. I think it was a 2 or 3 issue comic series. If you can get your hands on that, I highly recommend it. It's really funny and it's a great read. But I would love to see a Gotham City Sirens movie because so many comic fans know of Gotham City Sirens. So I think it would bring in a really big crowd of fans from the comics. But because Harley is in it, it would also bring in all of those new fans. And it would also give a spotlight back onto Poison Ivy. And I know I've stressed this in my prior podcasts, but Harley Quinn kind of stole Poison Ivy's light. So if they bring Poison Ivy back into a Harley Quinn movie, that gives so much potential for even a live action TV show for Poison Ivy or her standalone movie to really bring the new generation Poison Ivy how us older folks saw her growing up. Like when I was growing up, I would watch the old Batman and Robin with my dad. I remember that one movie where she kisses Robin and then he takes the plastic seal off his lips and he's like, haha, I got you, I'm not poisoned. So I grew up watching that kind of stuff. So Poison Ivy was always extremely popular. And she's a much older character than Harley Quinn. And it hasn't been until around 2013 where they started incorporating Poison Ivy into Harley's comics. And then they created a relationship between them. So they are always kind of grouped together. But I feel like if they did this movie and they did it in the right way, Poison Ivy could be her own entity, which would open up a whole new world of movies for her. And then bringing in a new Catwoman. There's been quite a few Catwomans. I think I've said it in this podcast before. If not, it was on a live stream. I loved Halle Berry's Catwoman, okay? I'm going to say it. I loved that movie. I watched that movie so much as a kid because at that time, there weren't a lot of superhero movies out there. And as a kid, we had HBO and it was always on HBO. So we would watch it on repeat. So I loved Halle Berry as Catwoman. But I would like to see a new person take over the role of Catwoman that is, what's that actress's name who just played her? She was in Les Mis. She's really famous. I can't remember her. I mean, Anne Hathaway. I never saw Anne Hathaway play Catwoman, but Anne Hathaway for me, whenever I see her, I think of Anne Hathaway. And for me, the best part about an actor or an actress is having them be that character and then seeing them in another movie and knowing they are a different character. Like when I watch Birds of Prey with Margot Robbie or the new Suicide Squad with Margot Robbie, I see her as Harley Quinn. Opposed to if I watch I, Tanya, I see her as Tanya because she is such a great character actress that she can form herself into these different characters. I don't think Anne Hathaway really has that kind of power with her acting. So I wasn't a fan of Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, even though I didn't see her in anything. But I would like them to get an actress that's not maybe as well known as some of the other ones. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on a Gotham City Sirens movie. Going on to the next one, I would love to see a Birds of Prey 2. I mean, this would be hard because they would have to fit it into the DCEU timeline. So Harley Quinn is in Birds of Prey, obviously. After Birds of Prey, we have the new Suicide Squad movie where Captain Boomerang asks her, Harles, what are you doing back here? And Harley sarcastically goes, I got road rage in a bank. So that's after Birds of Prey. Something happened in a bank where she got arrested again. So a Birds of Prey 2 movie would have to take place after this newest Suicide Squad movie, I think. And I think that would be really cool, but they kind of left it as the Birds of Prey as the group themselves were off doing their own things. So I don't think a Birds of Prey 2 would be likely to happen. It also wasn't a major hit in the box office, so much to the point that Warner Brothers actually changed the title from Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, because people did not realize it was a Harley Quinn movie apparently, so they actually changed the title of the movie after it had been released. So I don't think a Birds of Prey 2 movie is very likely at this point, with Harley Quinn in it, since they are off doing their own thing. But I would enjoy seeing a Birds of Prey 2 because I really enjoyed the original Birds of Prey movie. I think it was funny. I think that they did an amazing job, and every time I watch it, it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So I definitely vote for Birds of Prey 2. The next one on the list is a Harley and Ivy movie. So this one I have mixed feelings about because I already went over why I have mixed feelings about Harley and Ivy being attached together. But I think that if they went back to the roots of Batman the Animated Series, where Harley and Ivy were just friends and Ivy saves Harley from the Joker and gives her a kind of antidote that prevents her from toxins and gives her slight super strength. I think if they went back to those origins and based the movie around that, it would be spectacular, and took a less romantic approach to it. However, where comics are now, I know that they would take a romantic approach for it. I believe I've heard or I've read interviews that Margot Robbie is interested in doing a movie of Harley and Poison Ivy as in a relationship, which I am by no means against, but again, that brings in the factor that Harley Quinn is once again stealing Poison Ivy's light, but it could be really good for moviegoers and the casual movie fan to see Poison Ivy in a movie, and in turn, that might spur off it to its own entity as a Poison Ivy movie, which I would really like to see. Next on the list, I have Suicide Squad 3, but only if it is done by James Gunn. He did such a fantastic job with that movie, and if you haven't listened to my podcast review of that movie, you should go listen to it after you're done with this one, because that movie was spectacular. It was gory, it was bloody, it was what's the word? Incapable. I always mix up this word on this podcast, and you guys probably think I'm an idiot. It was amazing. To say the least, it was an amazing, flawlessly made movie by James Gunn, who had a vision and could pick any movie in DC that he wanted and was allowed to kill off any character he wanted. So he really did what he wanted with this movie, and I think that it did really well, and the comic fans really appreciated the take on this movie, especially having King Shark in there. I mean, King Shark was spectacular, and I loved Polka Dot Man, let me tell you. He ended up being one of my favorite people by the end besides Harley. But I would really love to see a Suicide Squad 3 with Harley, of course, but maybe bring in some other people. I mean, Peacemaker has his own show now. Maybe Peacemaker can come back. I don't really know what's going to be in the future of the Suicide Squad movies, but I really hope that if there's another Suicide Squad movie, that James Gunn is the director of it, because I think he did such a fantastic and flawless job with this newest Suicide Squad movie that you can't go wrong with him as a director for any DC movie, really. He's an amazing director no matter what he does. So I think that bringing him back for a Suicide Squad 3 would be monumentous and really amazing for the DC universe. The next one I have on my list is a Harley vs. Joker movie. That would be an interesting movie. I figure in a movie like this, they could incorporate parts of Harley's past. It could kind of be a prequel, and also a brand new movie, because they could talk more in depth about Harley Quinn's origins and where she came from and how she got through medical school and her parents and how her dad was a mobster growing up. So they could incorporate a lot of Harley Quinn's childhood into this movie and show her up until the point where she meets Joker in Arkham Asylum, and then it goes downhill from there. And then we could end with an epic battle scene between Harley Quinn and the Joker, much like we saw in the New 52 Suicide Squad comics, of them just fighting to the death. I mean, Harley punches him so hard into a wall that the Joker's skinned-off face becomes skinned off again and is stuck to the wall. I mean, it's an extremely graphic scene for comics. So that would be a really fun movie to watch, and it would also not only be a great movie, but it would show a younger audience that what they have as a relationship is not something to strive for, and that it is in fact an extremely abusive relationship. And I think that it would just be a really great overall message of the people who ship Harley and Joker together. I think that having a Harley versus Joker movie could really expose the Joker's dark side, and show that Harley is better off without him for a younger audience. Personally, I would like this movie to be rated R, but we all know that kids watch rated R movies anyways if they're a fan of the characters, so I mean, that's not really an issue here. The next one I have on my list is a Harley/Joker Criminal Insanity movie. So if you read the Harley Joker Criminal Insanity comics, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Pretty much this comic takes place in real life. Harley Quinn is a forensic psychologist working with the Gotham City PD to track down a mass murderer who calls himself the Joker. So it's based in real life, and a lot of people didn't like this comic series because of that. I loved it, however, because I am a big crime fan. I love crime documentaries, and I love a good story. So it was the perfect mixture of madness for me, and I was tied in issue to issue, and they left me on all kinds of twists and turns and cliffhangers. So I really think that it'd be cool if they turned that comic series into a movie and showed, like they did with the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, and kind of made it more realistic and not as comically, so people might be able to relate to it more, and maybe crime fans would watch it, so they could even bring in a whole new audience of fans if they did a movie like this that wasn't so spectacular, but more dark and more realistic of everyday life and trying to catch a serial killer. So I think that would be a really interesting movie. And the last one I got on my list here, which could actually be broken into two. So we'll go with the first one, Suicide Squad versus the Justice League. I know they are making a video game for this, and I do plan on getting the video game. I'm hoping they release a PS5 that is the Suicide Squad versus Justice League version, so I can get the PS5 version of it, like the physical console. I hope they release an exclusive physical console with a design on it for it. I have not bought a PS5 because I am holding out for that game to see if they do that, and if not, I will end up buying a PS5 and getting the game anyways. But I'm really excited for that game, and I think that Justice League versus the Suicide Squad would be an amazing movie. I hate to say it, but the Justice League would probably win because of Superman. I mean, he could literally kill everyone with his laser vision from high in the sky, and it would be one and done, but Superman's not that type of guy, which makes it very interesting, because the Justice League doesn't like to kill anyone, and the Suicide Squad doesn't care about dying, and they don't care about killing. So I think it would make a really interesting battle movie to see them go at it, and to see if maybe anyone in the Justice League actually goes past their breaking point and kills someone. These are just thoughts I randomly have. So I just came up with that in my head on the spot. It was not even on my list, but I think that it would make for a very interesting movie. And then the last one that I have that is most likely never going to happen, but a girl can wish, right? A girl can hope for something. It's Harley Quinn in the Justice League, not Harley Quinn against the Justice League. Because Harley Quinn is the perfect anti-hero. She has murdered people ruthlessly. She has committed a lot of crimes. She's been in Arkham. I think at one point she might have even been in Blackgate. Like, there is so much that Harley Quinn has done in her life that is just, to be frank, horrendous. And now in the comics, she is trying to make up for what she has done in the past, and she has taken accountability and responsibility for what she's done in the past and what she did with the Joker. So she has a good side to her as well. Like, she loves animals. In the New 52 series, she literally saves a bunch of animals from a shelter because they were going to kill them. So she has this nice side to her and this helpful side to her. But then she also has this really dark, tormented, vicious, violent, killing spree side to her, which makes her the perfect anti-hero. And I think that she would be really funny as a stand-in for the Justice League. I think that she would really annoy them, which would be part of the comical relief of whatever the movie is. So I would really like to see Harley Quinn as a member of the Justice League. I mean, hey, in the comics, she is already best friend. Well, I wouldn't say best friends with Power Girl, but she thinks she's best friends with Power Girl, okay? So that counts for something. And she is also a huge Wonder Woman fan. So Harley already loves the Justice League, even though she is, depending on the comic series, a villain. I consider her more of as an anti-hero because of the distinctness between her villainy and her heroism. So she is an anti-hero, and I think that it would just make for a hysterically funny movie if the right director did it. Let's just give all of DC over to James Gunn and let him take the reins, honestly. I'm at that point now where I just push it all over onto James Gunn's plate because I fully trust him with his direction and whatever he's going to do in the movies, whether that be DC or anything else. So I would really like to see James Gunn direct more movies in the DC universe, and he has already come out and stated that he is a massive Harley Quinn fan from the comics. So I mean, it's a perfect storm, James Gunn and Harley Quinn. It's the perfect storm. So just why don't we just DC Warner Brothers? Let's just give James Gunn everything. Why don't we just do that? But that's all I got for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have specific things or ideas you want me to talk about on my podcast, please feel free to message me on my Instagram. Again, it is at sweetheart.harley. I believe I said this in the beginning of the podcast, but I will remind you guys now if I didn't say it. September 25th and 26th, I will be in Rochester at Flower City Comic Con. I am a cosplay guest as well as a judge on the cosplay panel for Saturday and Sunday. So if you're in the Rochester, upstate New York or New York area, even Boston, New Jersey, if you're on the East Coast, September 25th and 26th in Rochester, Flower City Comic Con's happening. I will be there. I have a booth. I got some great things I will be selling. Along with my prints, I have t-shirts, pins. I just made a bunch of stickers. I got props. And I also made Harley Quinn prayer candles. So, I mean, I got a little bit of everything for everyone just because I love Harley Quinn and it's great to meet people who also love Harley Quinn. So I really love being a guest at conventions, and it's honestly such an honor to be a guest at conventions. But that is all I have for you guys this week. I will speak to you guys again in 2 weeks. I don't know what the theme will be, but I will most likely be talking about my time at Flower City Comic Con, or at least part of the podcast will be about that. The other half, not sure yet. We'll see how it goes. I'll take some notes and, go with it like I usually do. But thanks for tuning in, guys. This is the Sweetheart Harley podcast with Harleen. I will see you guys in 2 weeks.